So I've been kicking around this problem in my head for a while, and it pertains to scoops and how to get really nice control of the inlet lip, right? Right where it goes from the outside surface to the inside surface. You see these all the time in cars. A lot of the automotive ones are so thin, they're easier to control actually. I see them a lot in aviation and the models that I make. Like here's a Beechcraft King Air, and so what I'm talking about is this lip here, right at the opening here, and they're deceptively difficult. It's the kind of thing where you think it's probably easy until you actually go and do it, and then you realize there's a lot more to it than what you initially thought. And so when I run into problems like this, I like to just kind of practice them and simplify them and sort of boil it down to the basics, like the conceptual problem itself, and see what I can come up with as a solution. And so I'll just kind of workshop these problems until I find a solution. And sometimes what happens is I find a solution, I go, oh, that's pretty good, but it could be better. And then a couple of months later, something will rattle around in my brain, and I'll go, oh, well, what if we tried that? Let's see how that goes. And so I wanted to share with you 3 different solutions that I've come up with for solving this problem. And they go in order of quality and time required, right? So there's no free lunch on this one. The longer that you spend on it, the nicer the product's going to be. But I've really come up with 3 completely separate ways of doing it, or sort of 3 different levels. So to try something like this, I'll simplify it down to just the most basic. And so I've decided this is an outside surface, and then this curve here, say in front view, would be the desired location of the apex of the lip. So, I've said, okay, well, let's, we're not going to make it straight. That's a little too trivial for this. Let's give it some curve. And then we've got my interior surface, which is different from my exterior surface. And so when a lot of people are starting out, they think, well, this lip here, it's just a blend. So let's just blend surf it, right? And so I go from, say, here to here. Now I've split these edges, and what you quickly find out is that it's very difficult to do anything other than kind of fumbling around in the dark here. And you can sit here kind of all day and play around with these things and not end up with a surface that really, you can see it's like, well, I'm getting kind of close to this curve here, but the whole thing is completely wobbly in top view, right? And so when you look at this thing from the side, it's not going to have a really nice clean profile. So, this was when I first realized that this was a more difficult problem than I thought when I started doing things like this and having this target shape to it, and then realizing like, oh, like blend surf just doesn't work on this. It just kind of makes garbage. So my first breakthrough on this, I thought, well, okay, I know I want to start here, and I want to go through this point, and I know that, like, since this is a lip, and I want the lip to just touch this curve, well, that lip is going to be tangent, in this case, sort of vertically tangent, up or down, right as it passes through this point. And so I made some construction objects. I would make, here, let me change this color back to black, sure. So I would make a construction object like this, and I would treat this as 2 different blends, right? I would do like a blend surf from here to here. And you only want to go tangent on this because if you go anything above tangent, this ends up being very, very flat, right? Because if you go curvature to an extrusion, you end up with a big flat spot, especially when I do this on both sides. Then it looks really flat here. So here at this edge, you never want to go above tangency. You can go curvature here, no problem, but you never want to go above tangency here. It's sort of like going above tangency across a center line where you have mirrored objects. Oftentimes it looks too flat in the middle. You'll run into that problem. But anyway, so I would do something like this, and then I would do a blend of that to this. And we gotta swap them here, that's just fine. And this was the solution that I ran with for a pretty long time. And it's good. It's good. It's not great. If you look at the curvature graph here, right, we've got these, you know, we're not G2, of course not. We match tangent across this. Right, so we're not G2. And, you know, we've got these sort of, like here we've got these sort of double spikes in curvature. And really what we want at the end of the day, if we think about our curvature graph, going back to like my curvature graph video that I put out, I'm oftentimes thinking in my head, like, what would the curvature graph for this look like, ideally? And it would be, you know, slowly increasing, hitting a maximum at this point, and then slowly decreasing as you go back. Much like an airfoil would, right? And so this is, you know, this solution isn't terrible. It's quick, right? You can see it's just like, all right, bust it out. But I also suspected that there was a better solution out there. So the next thing that I came up with, I thought, okay, so I made this construction object that's an extrusion. What if I made a construction object that had some curvature to it already? And then instead of blending from here curvature and here tangency, what if I went curvature, curvature? Well, so what would that look like? And so my level 2 solution to this problem was to draw some circles. We've already sort of spilled the beans on what the solution is. Was to draw some circles perpendicular to this curve. So I used my construction plane, set C plane, perpendicular to curve. This is a very useful tool. And I drew some circles and I mirrored them over, and I used the sweep 1 set to simple. So that I came up with this new construction object that follows this line and has curvature in it already. And I thought, all right, that's got to be it. That is the solution to all my problems. I have really done something very smart. Pat myself on the back. What a great idea. And it's a good idea, for sure. It's a better idea. So this looks like this. Same technique as I did before. You know, we're just making this tube as our construction object. And we've made it such that the edge of it, the seam of it, is exactly running along the lip here. And then we went curvature, curvature between this surface and this construction object at the edge, and then did the same thing on the opposite edge of this construction object, from here to here. And so what did we get? Well, we did get something that is curvature continuous. For the most part. That's come undone, but could be rematched. So, I came up with a solution that was curvature continuous, which is to say that, like here at this curvature graph here, you can get these surfaces to meet such that the curvature combs, they meet at this point. But I still had the problem of this undesirable curvature graph with these sort of double lobes to them. And so I thought, oh man, I don't know. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing here. Because ultimately, we want this, like I said, to have this increasing curvature graph here. And then you maximize here at the point here, and then a decreasing one here. Now, I finally came up with what I think is an even better solution. Doing something, for me, rather simple, which was treating this again like a wing. I thought this looks like an airfoil. I've drawn many, many, many airfoils in my life and my work. What do we need to do to split something through this point that is curvature continuous with a nice curvature graph? That's the difference, right? That you end up with a very nice curvature graph. Like so, this is this solution, which I think is the best solution thus far. So this is my curvature graph now. You can see there's a very teeny tiny discontinuity here. But in general, look, we've got what we want. We're ramping up. We're coming to a maximum somewhere around the leading edge. And then we're going smoothly back down. So how do we do this? So it's a more curve-oriented approach, and it's a little funny. But what I did was I drew a line here. I created this. I still have this perpendicular to curve construction line, and I should mention that I've structured these surfaces in the way that I would if I modeled something nicely, such that, redo that. Let's reset this gumball. I hit the wrong thing. Such that the edges here are on, so this and this and this, they're all planar here. And so what I did was I did a blend curve between here and here. And the idea, let's see this. The idea was that, well, I should point edit these things till I get very close to having my crossing be where I want it to be. So just like this, where it's like, oh, huh. So we're coming off both of these curvature, and I have this target that I want to get near. And I want to edit this thing until I'm pretty darn close to where I want this thing to be in terms of the crossing, right? So it should, right about there. Right, so this curve, we want it to just barely kiss this vertical line. That's what we want. But now we can fix it exactly. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to hide this for a moment. Let's just delete that. I'm just going to do this single-sided. So I have this curve that I just made. And you can see it didn't take too long to get it close, but we want to get this right on. So I'm going to split this curve at a point. And my point's going to be sort of right here. I'm going to hide this one. And then I'm going to use the match command. And I'm going to match this curve to this by tangency. And then I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to match this, not match surf, just match this to this by tangency again. And so what I've done is I've set it to be exactly tangent to my lip curve and split it into a top and bottom half. And at this point, if you need to, if you want to, you can do a little bit of point massaging here. Oh, very funny. Let me change my gumball to seaplane, because if I do this, then it works this way great. So, if you need to, you can just do a little bit of point massaging. Run match again. Make sure that this is tangent to that. Oh, it's very interesting that they're doing that. Let's make sure these are all on the same construction plane. Project to seaplane. Delete. Yes. Here's a quick way to make stuff planar. Yes. Okay. There we go. So if you want to, at this point, right, we can just do a little tiny bit of point editing. Or you can even just match them and average them. Oh, of course, it's being silly. Anyway, so it depends on how long you want to smooth these things out and point edit them. So, which is what I did on this sort of best solution that I have. Here, let's hide these. And I repeated this same exercise here for these middle curves too. And then I just did surface by edges, edge surf. And said boom, 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 boom. Oh, of course. Yeah. Split this at this point. Great. And now this just becomes a surface matching exercise, right? So everything from here is just using match surf, making sure these tangencies are set, making sure this tangency set, right? It's point matching or it's surface matching and point editing. This approach takes the most time, it takes the most finesse, but it will ultimately yield the nicest result. I view all three of these solutions as valid and useful tools, right? So that very quick, easy one, where I just make a little strip and I just do it to tangent. If I'm mocking something up, I go, oh, is this, are you looking for something like this? I'm saying that to a customer, sort of like this. That's a perfectly great way to do it. Nice and fast and easy, and it gets the point across. Now, if I want something that's like a little bit more refined, I could step up to that level 2 solution where we use this tubular construction object. And then we create this G2 solution. There's G2, and it's better, but it might not have the best curvature graph you ever did see, right? But then, if I know that I'm making final production surfacing, and I need that surfacing to be perfect, and I want to stand behind that surfacing and be proud of it, and know that I did the best possible job that I could, then I'd go and do this sort of curve-oriented solution that I did here, where I create a single blend across the top and the bottom, and then I just do a little bit of manual adjustment to make sure it hits exactly the point that I want. And then I make each of these from edge surf, and then I match them as needed to hit the kind of numbers that I want, right? And so all of these are solutions. And I personally find it's really fun just to kind of workshop this stuff. And then I know it's like, okay, I've got the tool now. So, this is a specific case problem that I run into. And now it's like, cool, I can kind of stick that on the shelf, and anything, any kind of car scoop, any kind of hood scoop, inlet scoop, anything where I need this tight control of a lip, it's like, cool, I have a whole workflow. I know how to do that, and I know how to do it at sort of different levels of quality and speed, and sort of how to trade those off. All right? So I would encourage you to try something like this yourself. Play around with it. Try any one of these techniques, and let me know if they work out well for you. All right. Thanks for watching.